explore. And of course, we sometimes don't know why we are special unless somebody else told us. So there you go. We have Liam and Min tell us why Indonesia is very interesting. But in another aspect, we also have recently some not really a good news from Australia that some of Indonesian program was actually have a position of closing down from the universities. Meanwhile, we know that Indonesia and Australia, this is the time where we should collaborate more. So maybe we can start to do that from here, from in the youth level. So hello Eka, Nur, Umu, how are you? That's good. Good. Okay. So let's start. The first one, we will have a presentation from Gilang, or we call him G. He's from TRAVELXISM, and he will talk about what is TRAVELXISM first, so that we know who is conducting this event. I mean, we don't want some random people just conducting an event. So, Gilang, you can present yourself and TRAVELXISM, and then we can start with the discussion with me and Liam.
Okay, thank you so much, DC. Thank you so much, Mas Liam, Mas Min. Welcome to everyone who is joining this webinar. I think this is our first English webinar, because we usually organize our webinar in Indonesian language, and we are also organizing several tools as well. So please allow me to share this one first. Okay, so probably you are wondering what is actually TRAVELXISM, who we are, and what we do. First, we would like to say thank you very much for everyone who is actually participating in this webinar for the next an hour. So today we are going to have a webinar on how Australians see Indonesia, future youth collaboration and potentials. So TRAVELXISM is actually a startup or a small medium enterprise that sustainable tourism under the management of PT Gemilang Media Wisata. So we are based in Yogyakarta. We are supporting sustainable tourism through TRAVELXISM Academy. So we provide trainings, we provide workshops for human resources and tourism destinations, and then we also produce promotional media, both printed promotional media and also digital promotional media. Now we are we are busy with producing some videos, animations as well, and vlogs as well for several clients. And we also have TRAVELXISM tool. We focus more on organizing sustainable tour because of the sustainable concept that we have. So basically, we are actually a one-stop service. Yeah, you can call it. We are a one-stop service. So we train the human resources, and then we help them to promote their destinations, and then also we bring the guests in as well. And then also you may also wonder that during this pandemic, many tourism corporations, tourism companies shut down because of the pandemic, and why we still sustain because of we actually have a diversification of products as I mentioned before, because tourism sector and then business sector are very fragile particularly, and then it is also supported by one of the statement of one of my lecturers at Murdoch University in Western Australia, that tourism is actually very fragile sector because it will get hit first and will suffer the last if there is a pandemic, crisis, or natural disaster. What happened to us during this pandemic? We shut down all the products, offline products. So we stopped. We didn't. Our operations were just like shut down, just like that for several months during the pandemic. But during that time, we were actually thinking and trying to find innovations, trying to find solutions, because probably because like most of you are Indonesians, you might know the short film of Dudley from one of the actors, which is like quite famous, Bu Tejo, that we have to be, as a person, we have to be we have to come up with the solutions, So we try to shift all our products into online products and online trainings and then online workshops like what we are doing at the moment. And then we shifted the market for media productions into different market. We are targeting institutions, educational institutions, because they really need, during this pandemic, and they really need digital promotions more than the offline promotion strategy. And so we are targeting institutions. We have MOUs with several universities in Yogyakarta as well. For destinations, we are currently just targeting market only in Yogyakarta because of this pandemic as well. And for our tour, our sustainable tour, because we are still holding our offline tour, so we come up with the idea of doing virtual tours. We have been organizing several virtual tours since like several months ago, starting from Fremantle, Freo in Western Australia, Sydney, and then also where else? Lund in Sweden, and Borobudur. And then last weekend we organized virtual tours in Kota Gede, and then for the next several days and next week we're gonna have our upcoming virtual tours. For this Saturday we are going to organize virtual tours in two destinations in Yogyakarta Royal Palace and then also Water Castle. This will be delivered in English, so both tours will be delivered in English. So Yogyakarta Royal Palace and Taman Sari Water Castle on Saturday from 10 to 1, because we have two destinations straight away. And then the next week on Thursday, we are going to have English virtual tour. We are going to have again Mas Min and Mas Liam as our hosts for our virtual tour in Melbourne, and of course this will also be delivered in English. So for those who are interested, who are really getting bored, just staying at home, work from home, study from home, you can actually you can actually come with us to join our virtual tour for both, or you can either choose one of them. It was quite fun, so we have been organizing several tours, and then so that's it. And then that's all from me. If you want to connect, if you want to discuss with us, if you want to, we are very open for discussion. We are very open for partnerships. We are very open for cooperations. If you are also students, if you want to do the internship program, you can also contact us, follow our social media or email to us, or you can contact through WhatsApp directly to the TRAVELXISM admin 0812. That is the admin of TRAVELXISM, the one that who is sending you the link of Zoom, and you also register for this webinar. And then another one, 0821, that's my personal WhatsApp number. So if you want to contact me, you want to contact TRAVELXISM or anything for discussion regarding sustainable tourism or tourism or partnerships, you can just contact us. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and so that's all from me. Thank you very much, and then I'll get back to Daisy. I think
thank you so much for your information, Gilang. So everyone who's interested to do the next virtual tour is in Royal Palace of Yogyakarta and Water Castle. And that's going to be on Saturday. And then we will have another one on Thursday with Liam, who is currently in Melbourne, and we're going to explore Melbourne. So that would be very interesting. And now I would like to give the opportunity for Liam first, I think, discuss about how Australians see Indonesian, and especially future collaboration we can do together. And please feel free to drop questions for everyone here. Liam, time is yours.
Thank you, Daisy. So Min and I have made a PowerPoint together. So do you want to maybe share that while I start, Min? Cool. So both Min and I are not from Indonesian backgrounds, but we found ourselves studying it. So myself, my mum is from a German and Dutch background, so she speaks Dutch and German, well, my dad, he is quite a few generations in Australia, and before that was English. But his mum was a French teacher at a school, but my parents, even though they knew a few languages, they never taught me a language when I was growing up. So until I was at school, I'd only learned English, and I'd grown up in Melbourne. So I moved to England for a year when I was 5, did some school there. So I got to see Europe a little bit, but when I moved back to Australia, I was only there for a year. So I'm back to school in Australia, and I moved to a new school in year 6, and that school taught Indonesian. And that was the first time I had really heard of Indonesia. I'd heard of Bali, but I didn't even know Bali was in Indonesia at the time. Like, I hadn't
pretty common for a lot of us, really nice.
Yeah, a lot of Australians actually. So I had that in class, but my teacher couldn't really control all the loud 12-year-olds in the class. They were a little bit rowdy. But that was the last year of like elementary school. And then I moved to a secondary school, and I was lucky that my secondary school also taught Indonesian.
Oh.
And the Indonesian teacher at the secondary school was really nice, was really gentle, really. She was an Australian woman who married a man from Bali and who lived in Malang for several years. So,
I see.
Yeah, she gave us really good insight into the culture, and I enjoyed that. And yeah, so I really enjoyed that class. I kind of stuck out a couple of years. Then everyone had to do it the first few years, but then you got to choose whether you wanted to continue it. So I continued it because I really enjoyed learning about the vocab and the new cultures, because I understood European culture and Australian culture, and I see American on TV, but I really didn't know much about any sort of Asian culture, especially Indonesian. So yeah, I continued on that, and I did it right through to the end of year 12, and yeah, I've continued to do it through university now. So that's a brief introduction on how I got involved. Maybe Min could.
Yeah, Min, what's your story?
Hey, Liam, do you want to get the slides up? I can't get them up for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll try to do it.
And I'll answer the question. Yeah, so I think, so I'm Min, I'm from Sydney, and in case you hadn't noticed, I have a Asian appearance. So my parents are from Vietnam originally, but I was born in Australia. So I've always been raised in an Asian culture, in Vietnamese culture, which is very similar to Indonesian culture. But I guess Indonesian culture is also very unique, and it has, it has Javanese culture, it has Sundanese, and it has all these different languages, which is totally different from, I guess, Vietnamese culture. But I guess a lot of Australians don't really understand Indonesia that well. So I think maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, a poll was done of Australians, and I think 30% of Australians think that Bali is in Australia, when it's not, it's in a different country. And so this kind of misconceptions and misunderstanding is really common of Indonesia from the perspectives of Australians. A lot of Australians think Indonesia is also like a dictatorship, that it's not a democracy. They also think that it's an Islamic state, or these kind of ridiculous ideas, I guess. And I guess that's how I became interested in Indonesia, I guess. Sort of wanting to understand Australia's closest neighbour, and sort of want to bridge that gap and sort of correct a lot of that misunderstanding and those misconceptions that Australians have of Indonesia. So I basically started learning Bahasa at the university level, and eventually I started studying in Indonesia, like studying Bahasa Indonesia at Universitas Indonesia and Universitas Christian Satya Kemanchana for quite a long period. And I'm currently based in Jakarta at the moment. So when I go back to Australia, I'll have that experience, and I guess that experience to sort of help other Australians learn more about Indonesia and sort of increase their understanding of what Indonesia actually is, and that it's more than Bali or just tourism and beaches.
Yeah, so both of you have a similar background. The first thing was you both learned Indonesian language at school, yeah. So pretty much Indonesian language at school really become the bridge of lots of Australian understand Indonesia. And the second thing is you see that lots of misconception happen between Australian youth or Australian people about Indonesia, especially that we're not just Bali, we're not neighbor of Bali, and we're not Islamic country, and we're not dictatorship and all that. And how did that surprise you when you actually came to Indonesia and you see us like in the Indonesian? Maybe Min first, just a bit of impression. What do you feel when you came?
Sorry, do you mind repeating that question?
So how do you first feel when you arrive in Indonesia and you see those misconceptions are not true or wrong?
Yeah, I think it's I've been to Vietnam previously before going to Indonesia, and I guess in a lot of regards, Vietnam is similar to Indonesia. So you have like your macet, you have your agama, like your religion, and the importance of religion and culture. But at the same time, you also have the influence of like Islam, which Vietnam doesn't have. And obviously a lot of other cultures like Javanese and Balinese, in Hindu and sort of that kind of influence, which has affected obviously Indonesian society, culture, and so forth. So I guess coming to Jakarta for the first time in 2018 sort of really opened my eyes to Indonesian society and sort of challenge a lot of the misconceptions that I had of Indonesia. And as I learned more and sort of experienced that culture shock, it was a really, really good learning experience to just sort of, I guess, get rid of all those misconceptions that I had and all the assumptions that I had about Indonesian society and culture. So it was a really great learning experience and sort of forced me to get out of my comfort zone, I guess, and sort of made me less judgmental of the things I saw or the things I experienced while traveling and studying in Indonesia.
Okay. Maybe we can have your presentation and then later on Liam can answer my questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, so these are the slides I make. So when I was first introduced to Indonesian language, Bahasa Indonesia, was actually reading comics when I was a kid. So my brother and I used to read these comics called Tintin.
Ah, okay.
So this was like back when I was 10 years old maybe. And what I didn't realize was this was my first experience of Bahasa Indonesia, right? But then I guess I didn't realize that at the time. But then when I started studying Bahasa Indonesia at the university level, I reread these comics just for fun, just to sort of get those memories back again. And then I realized this was my first true experience reading and sort of getting introduced to Indonesian culture. And you'll see in the comics there, like they're speaking in Bahasa. And I guess it's really good to sort of read it and understand it. And I thought it was just a very fun, just sort of a fun fact that I had in my personal experience. But I guess my first, professional experience was at the university level. So Liam, do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, so my first experience as an adult was at the University of Sydney. So in Australia, we have something called the New Colombo Plan. So it's a scholarship program which helps Australians go study overseas in like the Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific region, and sort of study the culture, the language, and then sort of when these students come back to Australia, they sort of bring back with them that experience and that know-how, which benefits Australia in the sense that the Asia Pacific region is like our neighborhood. It's our neighbors, and sort of we need people who understand the region and sort of know how to work within the region, and I guess strengthen those relationships. So as part of the New Colombo plan, I went to Indonesia to study Bahasa, basically. Liam, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So what were our initial attitudes to Bahasa Indonesia? So I briefly touched on it before. It was in my year 6 classroom. I had no interest in being anywhere near it, but when I actually started in high school with someone who was very passionate about the language and the culture as well, I started really enjoying it. Like, I enjoyed learning about batik, and in class we would make our own like batik designs and learn about the history of that. And I'd enjoy making like Indonesian food, which is much better than Australian in my opinion. So like making like martabak manis and like gado-gado in class, I really enjoyed, because it's something that I would never eat in my everyday life.
And
Yes.
Indomie, don't forget that.
Okay, that's the only one I would eat. Yeah, so that's another thing. I only really thought of Indomie as Indonesian food, but it's obviously much deeper. I think that when I was 16, I went to Indonesia for the only time I've actually been, and I went to West Timor because I went to a Christian school, and that's the area of Indonesia that's like most Christian, like with the most amount of Christian people, and also Bali on the way home. So I didn't actually ever see the Islamic community as much in Indonesia, because they're two areas which are not predominantly Muslim. But I did really find interesting that the kind of emphasis on religion, because religion isn't as strong a part of society here in Australia. It's not as noticeable. But I also thought about in Bali, Australia's perception of Indonesia could just be Bali, but there's so much more to Indonesia. And I saw the same thing when I was in Bali, though, seeing like the drunk Australian tourists not really respecting that there's more in Indonesia. And I'd hate for Indonesians to think that was the stereotypical Australian as well, because both cultures have much more developed ideas and cultures and values than those kind of stereotypes suggest. So yeah, that was probably my initial attitude towards it. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a participant from Bali too. Maybe she can talk and discuss more about that later on. But yeah, go ahead.
We can go next slide maybe.
Yeah, next slide.
So why did you decide to study Bahasa Indonesian University? Did you want to go, Min?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, so for a lot of, I guess, Australian speakers, Australians, English is our native language. And so for a lot of us, Bahasa Indonesia is really accessible. It's the same alphabet, and there's no too many difficult like pronunciations, I guess, except with the exception of R, so the R, which is really difficult for a lot of Australians to pronounce.
Like that?
I can't do it.
Yeah, you can do it. Liam, do it.
I want to embarrass myself.
Yeah, we can't do it. So like, it's sort of embarrassing for us.
Me too. Is it like R? Is it not? No.
Yeah, so like we don't grow up
doing the R.
Yeah, so that's why it's really difficult for us to sort of try when we're much older, like sudah dewasa. So that's
sudah dewasa, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a language that's really accessible. And I guess like with Indonesia being so close to Australia, as a geographical neighbor, it's essential that Australia has close ties with the country, I guess. Because for us to have a productive working relationship, you need to have the same, I guess, to be able to communicate with each other, I guess. And obviously Indonesians learn English, and not a lot of Australians learn Bahasa Indonesia as much. So that's why it's important for Australians to learn Indonesian, I guess. And I think in recent years, Australian students have stopped studying Bahasa at the university level. So that trend has sort of been declining the past few years, which is a little disappointing, especially now that it's that relationship between Australia and Indonesia is much more important and will be growing in importance, I guess, for the foreseeable future.
I agree with Min in that, like, talking about how Indonesian is declining at universities. Like, there's recently, I think Desi mentioned it before, about La Trobe University looking at finishing their. Do you want to maybe mute yourself, Min? I think there's an echo. Yeah, so like La Trobe University are looking at cancelling their Indonesian program, and now there's 8 less universities that are doing Indonesian now than were doing in 1992, which is really, really concerning. And even the school that I actually learned Indonesian at, they replaced it for Mandarin. So the people at that school no longer learn Indonesian because they consider Mandarin a more global language or something. I don't know. Which is disappointing because I think for someone who doesn't know like Mandarin or Bahasa Indonesia, I think Bahasa is much more achievable to become fluent because, as Min was saying, with the same alphabet and not too many different pronunciations, and we're so close to each other, I think it's possible. So it's really disappointing. But to answer the question about why I chose Bahasa Indonesia, I actually finished year 12 studying Indonesian, and I didn't do too well. So I was doing commerce and arts at university, and I just had an extra unit to pick up a subject, and I chose to continue Indonesian. I didn't really plan on finishing it, but I just kept going, and now I'm majoring in Indonesian as well. So that was good, but it also meant that by the time I actually chose as my major, I didn't have time to do an exchange or anything in Indonesia, which is disappointing. And then this year I was meant to do a program through the new combo plan as well, but that was obviously cancelled. So yeah, a bit disappointing, but it's been good though.
Yeah, because of COVID, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's next one. But with that, there's a question actually. Maybe we can have a little bit of a conversation here from Muhammad Fitri Yandi Pratama. He is pengajar dan pegiat bahasa Indonesia bagi penutur asing Kalimantan, Borneo Island. What's your favorite Indonesian word, both of you, when you learn and study bahasa Indonesia for the first time? Thank you, mate.
My favorite word when I was studying?
Yeah.
Oh.
What's your favorite first word, Min?
Yeah, my favorite word would have to be yadong.
Oh, yadong. Okay.
But like my most favorite word would have to be like I can't say it here because it's like kasar. I just say among friends.
I see.
Yeah, I'll just say yadong.
Okay. Diplomatically. Liam, what's your
Mine's just probably going to be really random, but I remember gunting. It doesn't really have much meaning or anything. Obviously, like, it has a meaning, but I don't know why it's my favorite word, but I just like the word gunting.
So, with that, yadong, awesome, and mantul. Okay, so what's the next one? You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so what have your experiences been like in Indonesia? So I kind of touched on it before. I've only been once. So that was only about 2 weeks when I was 16, so I really can't say much because maybe I'll pass over to Min for this one.
Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Gunting. Okay.
Yeah, so my experience in Indonesia was really, really good. I got to make lots of new friends, and I got to also study Bahasa, which was really fun. But I also got to travel around the country, and I would say my time in Indonesia has been really, really positive. There's been a couple of negative experiences, but they're very rare and far in between, I guess. And yeah, my experience overall, whether it be studying, working, traveling, has just been overwhelmingly positive. So I've really enjoyed the food. Things like gado-gado and satay kambing were really, really enak. It's something that I'll miss very much when I go back to Australia, because you just don't find food like that back home. And I think Liam would agree. And also you have a really interesting and I guess really long culture, I guess. Like, you have a very rich culture in Indonesia, which just doesn't compare to Australia. And yeah, it's just like being able to learn about about Javanese culture and go to a Javanese wedding, or like go to Istiklal, or go to Istiklal during Sholat is just really interesting, and it's just something that you don't get back home in Australia. So yeah, my experience has been really good, and there's no shortage of good memories that I've had while studying here and while traveling here.
Okay. So which temple you were taking picture with, the dragon or the lion over there?
Yeah. I think that's a bit illegal what I did there, but that was in Borobudur, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's just
this
a brief when I was there, but we kind of touched on already.
Yeah, but you were in rural, I think, in the rural area, not in the city, yeah?
The top left's in Soe, so like more mountainous part, West Timor.
Okay.
But the rest aren't too far from Kupang, actually.
Okay.
But we'll keep going. Do you see Indonesia being involved in a future career? I can go first on this one, maybe.
Yeah.
So probably 2 years ago, I would have said no, not really, because I hadn't really decided on Indonesia as being my major or anything like that. But now I could definitely see it involved. So I'm starting as an accountant. I finished uni last week, so I started as an accountant in February.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's like in Indonesia, but in Australia, you need to get your chartered accountancy even after you start work there, and then you're eligible to work in other places. So before I even look at going overseas or something, and Indonesia is included in that, obviously, I would have to get my chartered accountancy, so that would be probably another 3 years or so. But I definitely, the program we're part of, the Australia-Indonesia Youth Exchange Program, has given Min and I lots of contacts. So Desi is one of them, so is Gilang, and they've been a great help. I definitely think that I'd like to make the most of the opportunity I've had and use it one day. I don't know what exactly it, how exactly my career would be, but I think I still need to improve my Bahasa a little bit before I can actually work in an Indonesian workplace, and also work on my accounting skills, because we had a speaker the other day to a webinar Min and I attended, and they talked about how if you go to a foreign country, you don't just get a job because you speak that language, because everyone there can speak that language. So if I move to Indonesia without any skills, everybody watching this probably has better Indonesian than me. They'd hire you, not me. So I need to make sure that, and it's the same for any of you if you were planning on moving to Australia, we all need to have skills so that we can be hired, and that language can accompany it and open more options for us. So yeah, that's what I'd like to see in my future.
Yeah. And how about you, Min?
Yeah, I'd have to say. Hello.
Hello? Yeah, we can hear you. Hello? We can hear you.
My internet's just a bit. The signal is a bit jelek.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I can see Indonesia being very much in my career. Maybe not necessarily working in Indonesia, but more to do with working in Australia-Indonesia relations back home in Australia. So possibly like in Canberra, working with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, which is our version of Kementerian Luar Negeri, which is Kemlu.
Yeah.
So yeah, working on that economic trade relationship between Australia and Indonesia is just as important. But there's also like a lot of opportunities in Indonesia. So I believe that Monash University, I think, is opening a campus in Jakarta.
That's correct.
Yeah, which is great, I guess, for a lot of Indonesians who are interested in getting an Australian education and sort of maybe want to work in Australia in the future, I guess, after they graduate. I don't necessarily see myself working, in Jakarta in say like that new campus, I guess, but yeah, I think that you don't necessarily need to be in Indonesia to sort of strengthen relations between the two countries. Yeah.
And go ahead. You can continue, and then we can have some questions now. Hello? Liam?
Do you have anything to say about this, Min?
Yeah, sorry. So this is my time in Indonesia. So this was around last year. So the first picture at the top is when I was volunteering with the Australia-Indonesia Youth Association. So that's a organization which strengthens relations between Indonesian youth and Australian youth. So it has chapters in both countries. In Indonesia, it has chapters in Jakarta, in Antar, I think, Yogyakarta, not Bali, but yeah, it has chapters all over Australia as well. And basically it holds like really fun networking nights and a lot of like cultural events, which allows like young Australians and young Indonesians to get to know each other and meet with each other, and sort of like access all those opportunities that are available in the space. So it's really good for networking, for building your network, and it's really good for like meeting new people, for making new friends. And in general, it's really good networking opportunities. And yeah, through AIYA, I was able to be a speaker at Bea Cukai, which is customs department in the Indonesian government, and speak about like sort of working in Australia-Indonesia relationship. And TIQ, which is Trade Investment Queensland, I was working with the commissioner on an initiative with my friend. So I got to meet the commissioner, who's a very high-level government official in the Queensland government, which is a state government in Australia. So yeah, like there's a lot of professional opportunities in Indonesia for Australians, and there's a lot of opportunities for Indonesians to sort of to work in that space, and that space is only going to be growing in the future.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good experience. Yeah. Now, what's this one?
Yeah. So I currently volunteer with AIYA and NILA. So NILA is sort of like a partner organization with AIYA, the National Australia Indonesia Language Awards. So I currently volunteer there as its finance director. So every year we hold a awards competition, which encourages Australians to sort of submit an entry to sort of practice their Bahasa Indonesia skills, and sort of you can win prizes, and also sort of like let other people sort of see the interest that Australians have in studying Bahasa. And Cause India is another organization which sort of has a mentoring program which helps young Australians and Indonesians sort of understand where their careers in the Australia-Indonesia space can take them.
Yeah. Check.
Yeah, I think Min's frozen.
Yeah. Min's is frozen.
I'll be back in a moment.
Okay. So maybe.
Cool. So that was everything. We had. There's our details. I need to practice my Indonesian, so if anyone wants to follow or add me, I'm happy to talk. I need the practice, so the more the better. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, everyone here pasti mau bicara bahasa Indonesia dengan Liam ya. Ya, jadi Liam is available, bisa dihubungi teman-teman kalau mau. Itu ada Instagram dan LinkedIn-nya. And we have several questions, but I want actually, those who raised question in the chat is actually very interesting. Her name is Stephanie from UAJY. Stephanie, is it okay for you to unmute yourself? Because you have very good questions actually. Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay, yes, go ahead, you can ask question.
Wait a second.
Ya, langsung aja pertanyaannya. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there something that we as Indonesians should be thankful for having something which is not available in Australia yet? For example, like Gojek, Go Massage, Go Mart, and stuff. Thank you.
I would absolutely love Go Clean and Go Massage. That's my favorite things that not happen in Australia. What do you think, Liam?
One thing that I love about Indonesia is, again, I've only been once, but I just love the street food and the street vendors.
Yeah, that's true.
That just does not happen in Australia. And then it's just, so like street vendors and food that is.
Okay, whose sound is that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so those kind of vendors on the street doesn't happen. And then in the city, we might have a thing called a food truck. So it's like a big van, but it's like double the price of what it normally would cost. It's like the opposite what you'd think. So I really, really like that. And same, I've been to Malaysia before, and they had really good street vendors and things like that as well. So I wish that Australia had that. Min, I think, missed the question.
Yeah, Min. The question is, what should we thankful as Indonesian that we have something that not exists in Australia? What do you think?
Yeah, I think travel is much cheaper in Indonesia. And I like that's relative. I think for Australians to travel around Australia, it can be really expensive, which is why we go overseas. Because I come from Sydney, and it's probably cheaper to go to Bali than it is to go to Perth, which is on the other side of the country within the same country.
That's correct.
So yeah, if like for a decision like that, like if I were to pick a place to have a holiday, it's just easier to go to Bali than it is to go to Perth, because Bali is much nicer. And I think so things are more affordable. I could probably eat out in Jakarta, and I think relative to like the Indonesian wage, I think it's much more affordable for Indonesians. Whereas if you were to eat out in Australia, like 3 meals a day, it can be very, very expensive.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
that adds up quite a lot. So I think, you can be grateful that, the food and everything is much cheaper in Indonesia.
Yeah, I hope that's answered the question. Stephanie, do you have more questions?
Did you get diarrhea because of the food at the first time?
Good question.
I didn't.
Oh, that's
I
good, Liam.
a strong stomach.
That's good. Really good. Min?
I think I got diarrhea like too many times. I think having street food like kaki lima, is it's not bahaya, but I think it can be a big risk sometimes, especially like if you're traveling and like you're on a bus or something. You definitely don't want to eat food that is risky, I guess. That is like a potential case of diarrhea. So in my first few weeks or months in Indonesia, I got a lot of diarrhea and was just like sibuk, in the toilet. But usually you just adapt, and that's what happened to me. So now I can eat from the kaki lima without a problem, and without going to the hospital for diarrhea. So
You have enough bacteria now, Min. That's what happened. Okay, so we have another question from NGO Boleh Mengajar from Eka Nur Umu. Eka, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question by yourself? That's a great question. Yeah.
Hi, Liam and Min. You have showed that you have already lived in Indonesia, right? In your opinion, what is something that local teenagers really need in education area? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So in terms of when you meet people in the village, what kind of education, that they probably would need, in your opinion?
I'll just speak very briefly, because I did visit a school in Timor when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a little bit different in the training of teachers, in that often it was kind of parents of at least at the school I went to, it was parents of the children who happened to be the teachers as well. When I know in Australia, both my parents teach at the elementary school.
Okay.
And I see the amount of planning and preparation that they do and how much they care for each kid. I don't know whether they've both studied for a long time to be able to teach. I don't know whether the parents at the school I went to did that, but again, that's just the one school I went to. I can't properly speak for other Indonesian schools because I don't know what the qualification level of teachers are.
I see. Yeah. So really need training for teachers. Yeah. What about Min? What do you think? You also traveled to several places in Indonesia.
I think it depends. I think there's a lot of issues within this area, and all of them need funding and need investment, usually by the government. But I think with COVID, you've seen a lot of lockdowns. You've seen social distancing, which means kids can't go to school, which means they need to do their learning at home. But the only problem with that is a lot of kids don't have the technology, I guess. So they don't have laptops, they don't have internet, which means they can't attend classes online. So it's a serious problem, and a lot of these kids can't afford it. A lot of their parents don't earn enough money, or they don't earn enough money during the pandemic, which is a serious situation. I think the government can invest more money in sort of more laptops or more phones or iPads so that kids can study from home. So it's something we have in Australia where high school students and primary school students, I think, are given laptops and iPads to sort of study from home and study coding and so forth and so forth.
So they get a laptop?
Yeah, they get it.
Wow.
But naturally, it's a very expensive program, and I think there's a lot of Indonesian kids, much more than in Australia. So it would definitely be very, very expensive. But yeah.
So, everyone else, Eka, I hope that answered your question. What do you think? You have more questions?
Okay, no, thank you. That's enough.
Okay, thank you. So I hope that will maybe you're from teaching background or education background, Eka?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's how they observe it, apparently. And thank you very much for the questions. Feel free to ask more. And everyone else can also raise their hands and ask questions. We'll make it easy for everyone to ask questions. But I also have a question. For a lot of Indonesian here, they might be interested to know, is there any chances for Indonesia or Indonesians to go to Australia or to have a career in Australia, or let's say to have a future in Australia? What do you think about that? Maybe Liam or Min, in your perspective, in your thoughts. And Liam, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I don't know much about the actual career part and how to go about moving to Australia and visa and that sort of thing. But you definitely see Indonesians around. I went to school with a couple of them. I go to church and I see a few there as well. So there's definitely Indonesian influence, and they are good at blending into Australian society well. Because there are some groups that when they migrate over to Australia, they kind of stay by themselves, but Indonesians do very well in integrating into Australian culture. I just think Indonesians really have a go, and they put themselves out there, and we have a large student population as well. Like I go to Monash University, and I think that's part of the reason they're relaunching their Indonesian program at the moment. They've just got the campus in Indonesia. I think they're trying to develop that relationship further, and that's exciting because that should open up more study pathways and then hopefully professional as well. But yeah, I definitely think that, and Min through AIYA, I would probably know some as well who have made the journey over. But it's definitely possible, for sure.
Yeah, especially if you have the skills that is needed in Australia. Absolutely, there's lots of opportunity, and even the certificate. I mean, the graduate certificate of undergraduate certificate was also recognized in Australia. So if you have the undergraduate certificate and the skills that they needed, that's possible, as well as the working holiday visas. That's also possible, but working holiday visas more is for the blue collar work. So like cuci piring or assistant chef, something like that, or picking apples. That's also possible. Min, what do you think?
I was about to mention the holiday visa. So that's one way that you can get to Australia. So it allows you to, I guess, live in Australia for a bit and also work at the same time, earning an Australian wage. That's one way that you can, I guess, experience Australia and travel around Australia. Other ways include study, and I think that's a potentially easy year one, I guess. Obviously, it would cost you. But there's also a lot of scholarships in that area. So I think there's LPDP, which is one scholarship program by the Indonesian government.
That's correct.
And the second one, and the really big one, is Australia Awards Indonesia, which is another scholarship program by the Australian government, which funds Indonesian master's students and PhD students to go study in Australia. And it's a very generous scholarship, and it covers your tuition, your living expenses, your flights, insurance, and so forth.
Even for you as Australian, you think it's generous, because it's cover everything, So for
I mean, I've studied in the Dam Siswa scholarship program, which is by Kemdikbud,
Yeah.
And that covered like living expenses and insurance, but it didn't cover like flights or
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas Australia Awards, you can live very comfortably in Australia on Australia Award, like the scholarship, and you can save a lot of money and send a lot of it back home to your family in Indonesia.
You kind of get a lot of story of that.
No, but it is very, very generous, and you'd be getting an Australian education as well, which is I think world renowned and known around the world for its quality. So that's the real prize, I guess. And it's one of my friends got Australia Awards last year, and he's currently in Canberra studying, and he's having the time of his life. But it's also very, very competitive. I think they only accept like 300 students.
That's right. Yeah.
And you have like 9,000 applicants, so it's something you have to work very hard for.
Yeah.
And you have to have a very, very clear goal and aim, I guess, that you want to achieve.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well about the tuition. The tuition, even for Australian, is very expensive, and the international student is even more expensive. So covering tuition fee is very, very good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a good benefit to have, and yeah, I guess like the only reason they do it is because they accept the best applicants, and yeah, like it's a very good investment to have for Australians to have Indonesians who have that Australian experience and bring that back to Indonesia, and sort of have a positive experience of Australia. And yeah, like it's not impossible to get. Like my friend, he was heavily involved in AIYA, so the Australia Indonesia Youth Association, and NILA, the National Australia Indonesia Language Awards, and sort of making that network and sort of understanding what he wanted to do in the Australia Indonesia space. So it's definitely not impossible, and my friend applied for the first time and he got it that time as well. So yeah.
Okay, so that's opportunity for everyone here, students, teachers, language learning programs. And is there any more questions? Anyone here want to ask questions? You can raise your hands. Yeah, go ahead. Anyone? I think somebody is trying to ask a question. Okay, so I have another question. So in your thought, what do you think we could do for the future collaboration? One of Stephanie, I think, asked a question about Gojek. We actually have lots of startup going on in Indonesia. It's like a big wave of startup build up in our countries, and also because we have a big population, the market is very big. Even Australian startup and New Zealand startup is trying to get into the Indonesian market. Do you see anything like things that you heard about that in Australia? The raising economy, for example.
Okay, I have heard about the innovation that is occurring in Indonesia, and hoping that Australia can continue to get a closer relationship with it. But I must say, I don't even keep track on exactly what innovations are happening in Australia, so I don't know the exact work. But I have seen some articles about Indonesia improving and becoming a real modern sort of epicenter of that sort of startup culture of people developing their own ideas into real life practice.
Yeah. And what about you? I mean, you are in Jakarta now. You've already used lots of that.
Yeah, I think Jakarta has a very big startup scene.
Yeah.
And it's definitely very innovative, I think. Like, I think things like Gojek and Grab are like evidence of that. And yeah, there's definitely like a lot of problems in Indonesia, and there's a lot of startups that are working to solve those, I think. I think it's like things like Kita Bisa, which is really interesting, and allowing people to donate. And facilitating those donations and making it much easier than it was previously. I think the startup scene is really good, and it's only going to, I guess, expand to solve a lot of issues like climate change, like natural disasters, and so forth. I think it's good to get that experience to work in one of those places if you can. To sort of understand what it's like and sort of just get that experience and take a risk at least once in your life.
Okay. Yeah, we have questions from Stephanie. Stephanie, do you want to give questions? Go ahead.
Sorry for asking again, but I want to ask, is there something like stuff or maybe food that has economic potential if only we had the chance to go to Australia? I mean, like when we go there and then we have something to sell, so the people might want to try it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Liam, do you understand the question? Sir?
I didn't entirely. Would you be able to repeat it, please?
Okay. Stephanie, do you want to repeat it?
Will you?
Okay, I'll do it. So Stephanie is asking question, is there any potentials of food from Indonesia that people might like if there's an opportunity for them to sell in Australia? That's a very simple question, but it's very important.
Potential food?
Yeah. Do you think that it will match the taste of Australian? We actually have...
It's not only about food, actually.
Oh, okay, something else. Oh, okay, so it could be also like products, yeah. So it could be like souvenirs or anything.
I know that there is a bit of a culture in Australia at the moment, especially among the younger people, and the go to festivals, is they wear kind of wild shirts, which is sort of similar to batik.
Oh, okay.
But not as good quality. And I think that batik in Australia, like batik shirts, could really do well at the moment because it's kind of, there's a culture at the moment of wearing similar shirts, but they're not as nice. So I think there's an opportunity for batik to be introduced into the Australian market, because I was actually trying to buy one the other day and it's just not really
good.
That's not really happening in Melbourne at the moment.
Okay.
I'd have to get it from Indonesia to get a good quality one. So I think that's an opportunity, for sure.
Could you repeat what's the name? Wild shirt?
Okay, in smiling, kind of just with lots of crazy patterns and bright colours.
It means like gila, kelihatannya gila.
Oh, okay, gila. Sure, gila. Maybe while I ask Liam, can you search for that? Because I'm curious. Like, can you Google search and then you can share?
Yeah.
Min, so what do you think that we could do, like, sell in Australia that would interest Australia?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question.
Yeah, I think too.
I think, batik, as Liam said, I think that's a really, really niche market. And I think there's there's definitely interest in that kind of product, but it's also amongst a very small subset of the Australian community. But we definitely don't have batik products. Like, I've never seen it before, and it's something you'd have to get done custom made. It's something you'd have to go to. Those are the shirts that Liam was talking about.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can tell. Yeah.
It's also because a lot of Australians don't realise that batik is actually a formal dress. So they just when they see it, I guess their first impression is, it's a very unprofessional, I guess. They don't really understand that it's a cultural thing, that it's a cultural and professional way of dressing in Indonesia. That's a perfect example, like with bananas and watermelons, I think.
Yeah.
Other products you could think of is cigarettes. I mean, cigarettes go for, I think, 10 ribu, which is $1 in Indonesia. In Australia, they go for $35.
Yeah.
That's for the smallest pack, which is 350 ribu for one pack.
For one pack.
And that's like a very big profit, I guess. Yeah. Definitely a big profit.
Yeah.
If you were to manufacture it in Indonesia and then export it to Australia, you could make a lot of money, but a lot of it is also like the pajak, which is tax.
Yes. Pajak.
As for food, I think tempeh is another one.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very expensive in Australia, and it's cheap in Indonesia. I think
Very cheap.
you could get it for like 10,000 or something. Just like the big blocks in Jakarta in the Blobak. But like if you were to find it in Australia, it would be very expensive. Like you wouldn't find it in the Pasar Modern, like Woolworths or Coles. You'd have to go to like a very niche place to get it, and it would be expensive. Like it would be very, very expensive.
Yeah. It's around, because I buy tempeh, so it's around $3.50. So, and which is like this much.
Yeah, that's right.
Half of what we get here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good question, Stephanie. Thank you. So, anyone else have a questions in relation to Australia? It could be also about Australia. No? Okay, so we have some evaluation and attendance for certificates. So if you're interested to fill out the evaluation form and also attendance list for your certificate, please click on the chat below here. And we also have several websites that you can chat, which will enlarge your network to Australia. As Min and Liam has explained before, they have Cindy, Naila, AIYA. Oh, Liam. Okay. And also Kami, Komunitas Eksportir Indonesia. So if you're interested to export anything to Indonesia, maybe the wild shirts, as Liam mentioned before, there is also scholarship that you can join. And also another thing that they mention is also in relation to some opportunity in Australia and some opportunity that they see in Indonesia. So we probably come to closing this event, and thank you so much for being here. And we want to have a pictures together. Maybe everyone can open their video, and we can have a picture together. Thank you. Everyone. Now we'll see people. Hey, there's Rina. Hi, Rina. And we have Fanny as well. Johannes Christo. Okay. So maybe Gilang can take picture, or should I take picture? Check, Gilang. Do you want to take picture?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
Probably 2 times of cheese, yeah?
Okay. 2 cheese.
2 pages. All right, so first one, everyone, cheese.
Cheese.
Okay. And then the second one, second page. All right. Okay, second page.
We have Lala, Jihad, Nanda.
Yeah. All right, so the second one, cheese.
Cheese.
Okay, cool.
Krishna Surya just appear.
Okay, I'll do it again.
Oh, okay. It just off again. Okay.
Okay, and then so another one.
Yeah.
Just cool.
Okay. All right, so everyone, thank you so much for your questions, and thank you so much. I hope you get some thing here, as well as you get some information that can bring you up in the future to Australia. And remember, we have a next event, which you can also join with Min and Liam to increase your listening, maybe practice
Daisy. Thank you, Mas Min, Mas Liam. Thank you.
Mas
so
Fitri
much.
is AIYEP. Oh, he was in AIYEP before.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Mas Fitri from AIYEP. We were actually also the alumni of the program. We did the AIYEP, Canada World Youth, Indonesia Canada Youth Exchange Program. It's a longer program than AIYEP that Mas Min and Mas Liam doing, because the program was actually for 7 months, 3.5 months in Canada and 3.5 months in Indonesia. So it's between minus 40 to plus 40 degrees. So it's kind of like.
Okay, thank you very much, Min and Liam. Good job. Thank you. And we got lots of information for you, bro. Thank you so much.
So yeah, thank you. We are still gonna be online if you want to ask questions or you want to hang out here. I'm opening this until 5:30 or until everyone's sleeping.
Oh yeah, even have someone just enter. Already done.
Well, I admitted it, so I can just say.
Hello. Bye